is of delegates who are requesting specific skills. What we've got there is there's something around strategy implementation. First comment says BC score method. Not entirely sure what that is, but we're also open to learning. There's somebody looking for highly advanced training, so that's about to come. We've got a request to relate what we're doing to change management and transitional leadership. How do I respond to pressure as a leader? How do I cope with challenges as a leader? Um, and these are similar. In this column, there are requests for time to collaborate and to network and to connect. In this column, two delegates who are appreciative of what's happening and enjoying the process. In this column, there are two requests for uh, assistance with partnerships, and one of them speaks about creating an agency, so maybe we'll hear more about that. And here we have one delegate who would like to relax. Okay, so by way of response, firstly, thank you for taking the time to think about what it is that you will find helpful and sharing that. That's very helpful for us as the host to understand what it is that will be meaningful for you. What I'm going to do in a minute is give you some response to this request around goals and where are we going and why are we doing this. In terms of introductions, we thought about this, and what I've asked my team to do is over the next 3 days at different intervals, each of us will introduce ourselves to you by way of sharing a personal story of being a fish out of water and learning to fly. So that is our response to your request to get to know us a little better. Um, in terms of this column, these are requests for very specific competencies. Um, and I think the best response to that is to say to you, our goal with organizing this conference in the way that we have is we're not in a position, or let me rather say, a choice we could have made was to give you 5 days of different topics. And there are many topics in leadership, as the chairperson pointed out at the beginning of the day. Listening skills, negotiation skills, uh, dealing with conflicts, handling diversity, the list goes on and on. Now, we could have brought experts on each of those topics to spend 40 minutes telling you about or giving you their advice. We don't believe that would have been helpful because you would have gone back with a full catalog of information of different tools. The challenge is next week, you need to go back to your organization and lead and deal with your reality. So, in conjunction with the WMO, the approach that we are taking is to give you something very specific. And I'm going to unpack that for you in a minute. But our approach in giving you something specific and an experience is that along the way, through the days that you are here, these things will come up. So, what we want you to be aware of as we're engaging with you is not just the process, but as Tom put slides up, there are different things that he's putting up, things around managing conversations, elements of leadership. So, to be aware of what's happening and to take that for yourself. But very specifically, our understanding is this is what you're dealing with. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of a VUCA world. Everybody familiar with VUCA? VUCA? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Right? And in many ways, that's the leadership challenge. You've got two doors you can walk through, and none of those doors looks like anything that you're familiar with. So which one do you choose? So what we believe is that what is really helpful as a leader in this kind of context is to help you to start to make sense of it. And Tom is going to unpack this through the day. But really, to answer the question, and it's a specific question around what are the goals? What's the goal? Where are we going? Why are we doing this? So this is our approach, and it's a very simple but powerful one, we believe. Our goal here is not to teach you how to think. You're all leaders in your own right. What we do believe is that if you're going to lead your organizations through this kind of world, what you will need to do is you will need to find a way to empower your organization to think in a way which is aligned and coherent and effective and leads to action. So, what we are doing in this week is we are giving you a set of tools that you can use to lead your organization in a VUCA world. Now, you'll remember that some of the requests were around dealing with pressure and coping with change. We believe the best thing we can do to empower you to deal with this challenge is to give you a set of tools and a process that you will be able to use to get your organization to think in a way which is coherent and aligned so that you can take action together. We believe that is the most important challenge. And if you can do that effectively, then we believe we made a contribution to your leadership. Now, the important thing is that we are giving you an experience of this process rather than telling you the process. So the challenge that we want you to be aware of as you go through the week is how will I do this with my people? Right? I mean, you at the moment are the followers. We are leading the process. We want you to do it in a way which you are thinking about. How will I lead this process for myself? What do I find helpful? What would I do differently? If I think about my context, how will I apply this to my context? But the key thing is that next week you can go back to your organization and identify a few key areas that you can begin to work with. And most importantly, as a leader, you can align the thinking of your people so that your whole organization is heading in the right direction. I hope that's helpful, and certainly we're happy to keep engaging around that and unpacking it as we go. I'm going to hand over to Tom, and Tom's going to give a little bit more context to this, and we're actually going to apply this to the process that you started yesterday. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think just for clarification, sometimes my friend said he's from Britain, it's English. Some of us also studied in England. If I look at VUCA, means volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguity. Language, English, sometimes can also be VUCA. The reason I'm saying that, my colleague said, one colleague said he was doing. I'm talking about the context in which relax was said. The context in which relax was said is, we have seen the challenges that we are knowing. You have to take luggage, go from hotel to hotel, come back in the morning. If you are in a relaxed mode, and if you are calm, then you will weather the storms. So that's why I said, let's relax, and then together cross the storms. So English can be also vocal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very beautifully put.
I don't know if you noticed this morning or the good cop, bad cop. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. We somehow not connected. Ariel's hanging out. Buka. Buka, buka. In Kosa, there's a word called buka. Wake up. Relax.
Bonjour.
Okay. So you can excuse me when my hands start flying away and the mic moves away from my mouth and you lose me, but I'll try and bring it back again. So the point I wanted to make is, first of all, welcome. Nice to see you all here, fresh and to some degree relaxed. See if I can do something about that. And the other point I wanted to make is, often when we have two people involved in a process, one's a good cop and one's the bad cop. If you look at Malcolm and I, who's the good cop and who's the bad cop? So in a sense, I'm the bad cop. So I want to just pick up and sort of carry on from where Malcolm was and do it sort of in a little bit of my way. Now, we need to understand that I've been in executive development for 25 years. I spent all my life developing high-ranking executives. What I do understand is the executive development process and how you actually deal with complexity and all of that sort of thing. And one of the things you can't do is squeeze an MBA into a week. Okay? All we can do is initiate some sort of process. It's then up to you to carry it on from there. Okay? So I'm going to start off with a quick video just to highlight something. And don't worry, you don't need to understand English to be able to make sense of it. Right. Right, let's get to that island then.
I'm doing animal.
Where?
It's great. And do something flying there. I think it's like a fruit or something. And fruit on. Look up! Oh wow. It's right there. Oh, it's like amazing
Okay, so that phenomenon is known as murmuration of those birds, the receding fish, receding birds, and it's really an awesome experience to actually experience it, at first to be there and experience it. The interesting thing about it, they've been researching this for many, many years. And the last research paper that came out was about 2013. I'm sure you know the PLOS journal, which is one of the most uh, uh, highly rated journals around. Reported on. It's actually that very complex phenomenon that you see there is actually managed by very simple things. What they've discovered is that each bird is only aware of 7 other birds. Okay. So what you've got is so if we take one sample here, you can't see it very well there. But this bird here is part of a group of 7 there, and it's part of another group of 7 there, and it also can be part of another group of 7. So each group is part of each bird is only aware of 7 birds in its environment, communicating with 7 birds. Why do you think we've got two groups of 6? there's a logic in terms of and the other thing is they follow 3 simple rules. Now what they've done is they've observed it and have managed the way they've discovered it is actually to replicate the same pattern of behavior but do it in a computer simulation. And what are the rules they used on that computer simulation? Alignment. Each bird moves in the same direction as its 7 neighbors. Cohesion. Each bird stays comfortably close to its 7 neighbors. But things do go wrong. When things do go wrong, it takes evasive action not to collide with another bird. Now, what they sense is quite interesting, is patterns. Because when you're flying in this swarm, you've got light and black, you've got silhouettes of the other birds, and you've got patterns there. And the way they choose their direction is when it becomes very dark, it means it's becoming very intensive, they move away to the light. So they actually respond to the patterns of what they're observing. But my point here is we can achieve these very complex patterns of behavior by understanding some simple rules. But to understand those rules, you have to move from the complexity. You can't start off with those rules. You have to understand the complex behavior and move beyond the complex behavior and identify the simple rules that you can follow to replicate that complex behavior. Okay, so let's bring that back to management and organization. By the way, I produced our new slides, which we will send to you as well as we go along, because a key part of VUCA is agility. So we've got to be agile and respond to the changing needs. So I didn't intend showing this video in the beginning. I only decided last night that it may be appropriate to actually help you understand the process a lot better. Okay, talking about organizations and talking about leadership in organizations. I've worked very closely with many large organizations, and one of the ones that I've worked closely with is AngloGold Ashanti, which in its time was one of the biggest gold mining operations in the world. They had Ashanti is a Ghanaian mine, which they actually merged with at some point. And I worked closely with a guy called Mark Kutufani, who's now the CEO of Anglo America, and is actually recognized as one of the most effective mining executives in the world. And he followed a model based on I'm not going to go into his detail, a guy called Elliot Jacques, who actually built a model of how organizations work, and I'm just going to take you through that now. So if you look at levels of organizations, a key thing to understand is the time scale of which the organization experiences the consequence of the decisions that you make. So an executive makes a decision now, but the organization may only experience the consequences of those decisions 5, 10, 20 years down the line. So a useful way of thinking about management is how long further down the line does your organization experience the consequence of the decisions that you make? Clearly that's important. So at the bottom end of an organization, we've got frontline staff, clerical, the sorts of things they do is they do routine practical processes, they make routine judgments, that's the nature of their work. As you move up the organization, the next level, you get frontline managers and specialists in their particular areas. The main work that they get involved with is diagnostics and technical judgments. Then you get to the next level where you get heads of departments, heads of units, and their primary role from a management point of view is systemic coordination of what their units do, of the different people. Then the next level up, we get divisional and functional heads. We focus in on strategic development is what they get involved in. Then strategic direction, which is CEOs of national organizations. Then environmental scanning, which is normally done by CEOs of international organizations. So that you see the jobs become increasingly complex as you actually go up. Then right at the top, you get CEOs of global organizations, and what they do is they shape contexts. Okay, so they don't respond to context, they actually shape the context in which they find themselves. Does that make sense? So if you look at, we've probably got 3 general levels of management. If you look at the first 3 levels, we're concerned here about managing the present, managing what is happening now, day to day, serving our customers today, delivering our products and services today, and we're normally working in a time horizon of about 3 years maximum. And this is a sort of a measure of the complexity of the work that they do. As you go up, you then start planning for the future. You can see what you do becomes increasingly complex, the nature of the work. And your time horizon moves to about 5 years. So in these areas, the decisions made here, the organization roughly will start experiencing the consequence of those decisions in about 5 years' time. Now, that's a general term that varies from one industry to another. In the mining industry, it would be very different. It takes 3 years to get a new mine running, so there's a long term. Yet in a high-tech industry, those time periods may be a lot shorter. And then at the top end, it's about shaping the future. So you can see increasing complexity and increasing time horizon associated with what they do. Now, what enables people to do that? So what about leadership development? Now, we heard many nice things, empathy and the sorts of, but I'm afraid it takes a lot more than that. Be nice to everyone. To be a leadership, to lead a global organization is a hell of a lot more than just that. The first realization is that those levels of management actually are up, you've got to think of them upside down. Where is the value in an organization created? The value is created in the present, not in the future. So that's where the value of an organization, that's where the products and the services are that you provide your customers with. Planning the future has to put the systems in place that will enable you to provide that value in the future. When you run into a problem, means there were bad decisions made, Because what you're experiencing are the consequences, of decisions that were made there. Okay. And then, so this shaping the future supports planning for the future, and planning for the future supports managing the present. So I think of you must turn the organization upside down if you're going to manage it, to understand what you're doing. Value is not created in the boardroom. It's created on the shop floor. That's where value is created. Okay, so there's a lot more here. I'm not going to go into that. We can talk about of the nature of the conversations that take at this level, but I need you to understand the next slide, which is important. The ability to lead rests to a large degree in your ability to process complex information, the complexity with which you process information. And Elliot Jacques identified 4 levels, what he calls declarative. So if you talk to people, it's either this or that, maybe it's this or, so it's either or type reasoning. Okay? That's called declarative. Then we get and. So we're starting to link things together now. We're starting to link information together. And that's generally referred to as cumulative. You build up the information as you go along. Then you start linking logically, link arguments and processes together, which we looked at yesterday. Antecedents, attributes, consequences is serial thinking because you're linking ideas together. Can you see? Antecedents create the attributes lead to the consequences. And then the highest level of complexity is parallel thinking, where you've got multiple lines of reasoning together, which you then bring together again. So a significant part of leadership development is to develop your ability with which you're able to process complex information. And what makes it even more complex is the type of information. So if you go back, you remember my slide of Bessie, ladder of abstraction? We deal with very concrete information here, but very abstract information there. So if we look at that, we look at 4 categories of information. Concrete information, symbolic information. Most of what we do is symbolic. I mean, financial information is symbolic. You don't actually deal with real money, you deal with symbols of real money. Okay. And then you deal with abstract concepts of information, and then you start dealing with universal. So someone who operates here can, because they work at this level, they can move into any context, any organization. So someone can move from government, move into mining industry, and immediately start making sense of what's happening there, because they work with universal concepts that apply to all of them. Now, the important thing is that at each one, yeah, you actually do declarative processing, cumulative, serial, with concrete information. Someone who can do parallel processing with concrete information may not be able to do parallel processing with symbolic information. And it's unlikely that you do. So if you're looking at the sorts of management we're looking at into 20 years in the future, they're largely operating in this area. They're able to do parallel processing with symbolic information and perhaps the declarative, cumulative with abstract conceptual information. So you need to learn to process information, the different types of information, concrete, symbolic, abstract, conceptual. None of us is going to get to university. We've got very few people operating at that level. So you see where we're going with all information processing you're trying to do. What we're trying to do is help you to process information and to do it in complex manners with different types of information. Leadership doesn't come in a lucky packet. It's hard work. And it takes experience. Okay, so how are we doing this? Okay, so it varies across fields. I'm not going to go into that. So we started off, and this is a slide we did look at yesterday. We looked at possible data. There's massive amounts of data out there, and we've got to select data that we're going to work with. So it's a selection process in first place. How do you select? If you're only working with attributes, it'll influence your selection process. If you're going to select well, you need to be able to think in terms of antecedents, attributes, and consequences. Otherwise, you're not going to select well. Then we've got to categorize things. Now, this is what we ended up yesterday, and I'm going to come back to that to continue the process. We're going to have categories in our labels. Remember, that's what we did yesterday, they're on your table. Then what we're going to do is take those categories and build a model out of them. I'm going to take you through a model of what some students did for me in some work a little while back of how they built a model like that. So this is a basic information processing process of which you take data that's available and you produce a model of something that answers a question. And how well you answer that question is determined by how well you process that information. And you remember the slide? It's about the knowledge pyramid. It's how do we move from data to wisdom? How do we turn data into information, information into knowledge, knowledge into wisdom? Okay, that's enough of that slide. Let's get back to another one. So what I'm going to do now is just go through that model building process, which I spoke about, and essentially this is where you are in your process. I've just taken the labels from what the student group did for me, and they were about how do we build teams, how do we build teamwork and learn as teams. That's what their challenge was. Okay. Yours was weather readiness, climate resilience, decision making for sustainable development, whatever your focus was, that you each focus on something. The focus here is on team building. And I'm not giving you all the detail of what they said, but what I am giving you is their labels. Okay, so they start off the process. You've got to be clear about what is the question you're trying to answer. Okay, so we're about teamwork, and what we're going to do. Can you hear me? I lost myself there for a minute. And we're going to explore relationships between those labels. And essentially, in this particular exercise, we're going to explore causal relationships. Causality is a key, which is most of your weather models are causal models that you're actually working with. Causality. Does one thing cause the other? Does a change in one cause a change in the other? Basically, the logical reasoning. So what they do is they produced all those labels. And we start off by actually just taking those labels and putting them in a circular process, which you're going to do next. And then we start exploring the relationships between them. So if we compare level of individual learning and the level of team coordination, those are two labels that they identified. So you ask yourself, is there a causal relationship between the two? Does one cause the other? If so, which causes which? So would a change in level coordination improve the level of learning? Or will a change in the level of learning improve the level of team coordination? Now, sometimes it goes both ways, but then in this exercise, we're going to choose the strongest way. Now, you may choose differently, but this team decided that within the team, if they improved their coordination of the activities that they did, they'd improve the overall learning of the individuals. So they drew an arrow from there to there. You can see the logic of that. Then they went round and decided the next one was accuracy of timekeeping and level of individual learning. They decided there is no relationship between the two, so they draw an arrow. You don't have to have an arrow between each of them. Then they compared level of learning with the level of individual involvement in the team process. And they decided a very strong relationship there. And as you increase the level of individual involvement, you increase the level of individual learning. There's a clear logic to how they thought that. And then they went on and compared it with the rest. So they compared this one to all the others. And they found that all of those influenced the individual level of learning within the team. Is it making sense? Okay. Then you come down to this one and you compare this one with all the others. Which is what they did, okay? Then you go through the process, and each time you come around to this one, you then compare this one to all the other processes. Then you come down to this one and compare that. So each time you'll always do one less because you've already done the relationship between you. You'll do one. So you have to move systematically, otherwise you get lost in the process of doing those comparisons. So they've got the beginnings of a model here. Can you see that? The beginnings of a causal model which will help them manage their team. Then what they do, once they finish, is you start counting. So we look at this level of learning, we find we've got 4 arrows coming in and 1 going out, okay, which is useful. So you go around for each one of them and you count the number of arrows going in and the number of arrows going out. So this is qualitative modeling. It's not mathematical modeling. It's not statistical modeling. You're dealing with qualitative information. And if one looks at stats, I'm assuming we've got statisticians here on the measurement scale. We look at what we call nominal and ordinal scale. We're not looking at distance and ratio scales from a statistic point of view. With qualitative information, we can only deal with nominal and ordinal. In other words, we order our stuff in some particular way. We may push distance every now and again, but we can't do that with any confidence. So what have we got here? What does this tell us? That these 2 processes have got the most ones going out, effectiveness of planning and level of involvement. These are the processes that drive the whole model. Can you see that? Because they've got the most arrows coming out. They influence the most things. And these ones have got the most arrows coming in. That's what we call an outcome. The outcome of that process is individual learning. So, they've got the beginnings of a model, which can help them manage their team processes, which will improve the performance of their team, but also, most importantly, because they're on an academic program, I'll be in a minute here, they're actually able to improve the individual learning. Yep.
Number 7.
Yeah.
2 out and 1 in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my apologies. They probably failed this exercise. Thank you. You always leave a little bit of a mistake there, you know. The old Italian architects, whenever they built great, I don't know how to tell it, great buildings, they always left a little fault in, because nothing could be perfect, only God is perfect. So what made man's always got a little fault in. And then, of course, there's all sorts of other things you can do. What is interesting here in this particular one is you've actually got a feedback loop. You've got here, as the level of individual involvement involves, will increase the level of team coordination. As we increase the level of team coordination, we'll increase the level of respect for each other. As we increase the level of respect for each other, we'll actually increase our level of involvement. So that's the engine that for them was the engine that drove their learning process. Can you see that? Okay, so you're going to do this now with your forces, going to do exactly the same process. I've given it in the handout I gave you on Systems Modeling 101. I'll describe this process in detail. But before we can do that, we have to go back and check our work. Anyway, this is the sort of learning cycle that actually happens, which is, sorry, I forgot to touch on this, is that any learning cycle starts off with a question, you develop a theory that answers the question, you test your theory, you reflect on the results, and you raise new questions. That's the essence of a basic learning cycle. So in a sense, what this does, their purpose, what they wanted to focus on is how to work effectively and learn as a team. That was their focus. Clearly their purpose was, each one made a different purpose. They're in an academic program, it affected their careers. And they need to know how we're going to do this. So this model answers this question. How can we effectively work and learn as a team? It answers that question. Was there questions? Say again. A model can answer any of. But how you will structure your model, how you'll do those relationships will be determined by your purpose. Okay, you can use the same labels for a different purpose and you get a different model out of it. You can use the same variables for a different purpose, you'll explore different relationships between the variables. Okay. Okay, now, one of the things I asked you yesterday was when you did your categories, is to try and give me more about what that name is. So if one looks at this category, and each one of those elements had management in it, and you just put management there, you lose a lot of useful information. Okay, so what's this X's and A's and Y's and B's? If you just put management up there, you lose that information, you lose that insight. Okay. So let's take an example here. I've got two different ones. They're both about management. This one is managers are rigid and follow rules blindly. I'm not saying that's the case, but that's an example of what you could have. Management are slow to learn and respond to changes. An observation that you made. Managers are dull and don't recognize and reward excellence. I'm sure a lot of you feel exactly the same way about your own organization. What does that tell me about management? If I look at this one, it says managers are flexible. By breaking down work into smaller units and allow smaller units to work. Managers focus on customer satisfaction. Managers sorry, I made a mistake. Another error to show I'm not perfect. It should be said. It's another one that's a repeat of that one. But can you see these are two different types of management? If I just put management there, I'd have lost all of that. So from an information processing, you've lost it. You've actually oversimplified, and you've lost the richness and the complexity of the information that you've got available. Okay, so I'd like you now to return to your categories there, and what I want to see if you can develop far richer labels than what you've currently got. Some of you have, but many of you don't. And unless you do that, we can't go on to the next phase. Thank you very much. Let's go. Or as Rashiki would say, rock and roll. What I'm saying here, putting management there is not rich information. Your labels contain a lot of information which you're missing. And the example I said here is, if I just put management here, because management appears in each one of those, they're all about management. But what are they telling me about management? They're telling me that this management here is very bureaucratic. And I want to know what that bureaucratic is. Otherwise, you've lost the richness of your information. And the same here. This is also about management, but it tells me something different about management. It tells this management's agile. And I'm going to come back to agile when we look at VUCA. Can you see if you just put management there, you lose that? Sorry, I mean this one. And the other thing is you don't have to have 7 categories. That particular model has 7. You work with what you've got. So you go back to your labels at the top and tell me what this is saying about that label. Saying development capacity is not enough. What capacity has to develop? What is it telling me about development capacity? Am I talking about capacity development in the weather services, in the mining industry, in the Department of Transport? What am I talking about?
Sorry. How can I know that it is it? Because I'm setting a learning question this time.
Yeah, but we're only going to do the answer. We're not going to go through the answers. We're not going to test this.
Yeah, because really I need to understand this. I can understand it by
I'm not even saying it's what's wrong or right. I'm saying what this is telling me. Who's struggling? Let's just ask a question that everyone can hear and we answer it. Who wants to ask a question? Which group is confused? Okay, just stand up and ask the question so that everyone can hear, so that we answer the group. Yeah.
Okay, we have the categories here. We have categories. We have seven
You've got your
categories.
categories.
Yes, and then as you explained, whenever I'm talking about capacity building, I have an idea or many ideas maybe, because many things coming under capacity building. This idea is different from this idea and different from that one.
They should belong in the same category.
Yeah, but they belong in the same category. So how we explain the information and where we put it.
All I'm saying is, yeah, you've said resources. What is disturbing me about it is there's a lot more information in here than just the book. So you've got to capture what it is. So you add more to this. You add bureaucratic management. You add the bureaucratic management to your category. Yes. I'm sure you want to touch this. No, I'm not actually going to, I'm just using that as an example. No, you get what we call a strengths thing as a part. Focus on that. What you need to say is, what are those saying about training? You don't have to squeeze it all in there, but they're telling you something about training it. So you've got to add, like I've added this in that little one, all that about management, about being bureaucratic. So therefore I added bureaucratic management, which captures everything in there. And this was agile, it captures everything in there. So the word you qualify that has to capture what those are saying. Well, then you may want to separate them. Separate them. Yes, you can separate them if you can't capture them.